What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Frankie D'Astoli Show. I am your host, Frankie D'Astoli. As always, excited to have you here. I am very excited about this episode. We are going over how to scale a real estate portfolio, part two. So if you haven't listened to part one, I highly recommend that you go back and you listen to that episode that dropped last week. But you can listen to this episode without listening to part one, but you are going to want to really capture everything talked about in part one. In part one, we talk about what is really personally needed to grow and scale a real estate portfolio. We talk about things such as vision, temperance, prudence, the people you need, discipline, organization, consistency, fortitude, how to push forward through hard times. We talk a lot about kind of those internal aspects that are needed in order to really get yourself in a proper position to take on the overhaul of scaling a portfolio. And when I'm talking about scaling a portfolio, I'm talking about doing it very, very quickly. I'm not talking about, kind of buying a property a year or two properties a year even. I'm talking about buying 2, 3, 4 houses a month. That's the type of scaling that I'm talking about. And I reference this when I look at, me and my boy Steven, what we've done over the past 10 months. We bought 18 doors, which equated to 16 properties. So we've really averaged close to 2 properties a month. And we've really ramped that up as time has gone on. I think this past month we closed 2. This upcoming month we only actually have 1 in the hopper, so we do need to pick that up. But there were a few months kind of around that October, September, August range where we were buying 3 or 4 a month. So we had a lot that was coming in. So when I talk about scaling a portfolio, I'm talking about doing it in a quick time frame. I'm talking about pretty much going from, whether it's 0 to 10 or, 5 to 20, whatever it is, on a very, very quick timeline. We're talking months, and how to really do that. And those aspects that we talked about in part one really revolve around you, the operator of the portfolio. And if you have a partner involved, what you guys really need in order to actually execute on this, right? Because when you look at the scaling of a portfolio, there's a lot of outside factors that are important, but really it's the internal. It's who you are. It's how you handle challenges. It's how you handle adversity. It's the vision that you have. It's the fortitude, as I mentioned, to continue to push forward. It's the decision-making processes. It's the people that are around you that are so important. We're going to talk a lot more about people in this episode, along with a few other things. But I would definitely recommend going back, listening to part one before you listen to part two. Again, you don't have to. You could get a lot out of this. We're really going to talk about the mechanism that I use, the BRRRR strategy in this, and how to really utilize that to scale. But I definitely, again, like I said, I suggest going back and listening to that episode if you haven't. And it's funny, one of my boys actually hit me up and he was like, yo, I just listened to this, the podcast, and I had no intentions of really growing a real estate portfolio, but now you got me really looking forward to it, and I kind of want to get into it. Again, it is not a lifestyle for everybody. I will say, like, I very much have enjoyed the process, but there have been many, many times where I've been like, my life would be so much easier if I just worked a W-2 job. Like, why did I get into this, right? There were a lot of times where I was like, man, like, this could go so south that it could wreck everything. And it's scary times. It's actual, Steve and I, there were times where Steve and I, like, we would walk out of the close. I remember there's one time we closed a property and we walked out of closing and we were both like depressed. We were both like, oh my gosh, because it just felt like we added another problem to the already so many problems that we have. And at that point, we kind of like had a good reflection moment. We were just like, we need to like really button things up and tighten up out here if we want to really be able to like make it. And since then, now every time we leave a closing, we're actually very ecstatic. But that's like part of it. That actually like is a real true story, and that could happen. And when you go to scale, and again, when I talk about scaling, I'm talking about a lot of properties in a short period of time. You need to be organized, and you need to know that like you are committed. You have to be committed. You have to be committed to the path, to the process, to the ups and downs. And you need to keep that long-term vision in mind. And the long-term vision for us is pretty much, and when I say long-term for us, it's not like super long-term. It's not like 5 or 10 years. It's really about a year and a half from this moment. In May of 2026, we want to be at 100% occupancy on 50 doors that generate $400 in net cash flow a month. That give us $20,000 a month, which is at that point, we could sit back and we could say, cool, we got 20,000 a month coming in passive income. We could take 10 each and we could literally like live our lives how we want to on our terms. That's kind of how it goes. As we're building, we're making a lot of our money currently right now through our refinances because we're buying them at such a good discounted price and we have good, reliable contractors and we're able to refinance out and make money on those deals. But that's kind of the short term, whereas the long-term vision is to be able to sit back on the portfolio that's built and be able to live life on our terms. And when times get tough, we got to keep that on the forefront. And that happens often. When I tell you times get tough, like it's like a weekly thing. I just want everybody to know this, right? Like this is not like oh man, like every quarter I have one of these moments where it's like this kind of sucks. Like this is almost like at times it's almost like a daily thing, right? Like it's almost like the best way for me to describe it is like when you're scaling a portfolio, if there's, 10 occasions, 9 of those occasions, you're the nail. You are constantly getting just hit and hit and hit by the hammer. But then you have 1, maybe 2, maybe 3 sometimes, if you're really, really lucky, where you're actually the hammer and you're hitting that nail. But when you are the hammer is when it feels so good and it gives you that motivation to continue to go and be the nail, those 8, 9, 7 times, whatever it might be, so that eventually you're going to become the hammer. And that's all part of it. And the as you're scaling the portfolio, every single day you learn lessons, you grow, all of that stuff. That's all kind of, comes with the territory. And as I was mentioning last episode, it is a lot of fun. Like I look back, I wouldn't want to be doing anything else. I wouldn't want to be doing it with anybody else. And it makes those really challenging times, kind of bearable because you just know what's on the other side. But anyway, before I get into part 2 of this, I just want to actually reflect. I was at Mass this morning. I'm recording this on a Sunday. And there was a great reading. But one thing I will say is, I just got to obviously do my part here. Like, you might have heard the reading if you went to Mass. If you didn't go to Mass, I encourage you guys, please, please, please go to Mass. Go to Mass. Number one, it's a sin to not go to Mass. And I'm not just talking about a sin of like dropping an F-bomb, right? That's a venial sin. Those are kind of some lighter sins. You still need to go to confession. You should still obviously get those off your soul, but those are venial sins. If you don't go to Mass, it is what's called a mortal sin. And if you die with a mortal sin, you go to hell. That's how this works, right? And this is intense. I know the episode just took a really hard, sharp right turn. But I just want to let everybody know because they don't talk about these things. And there's a reason that they don't talk about these things. And I think it's a lot deeper than, I could get into on an episode like this. But it is a mortal sin if you do not go to Mass. And I don't say this to scare anybody, although I do feel like the fear of God is a very, very big part of a lot of people becoming very holy. I say this just to put it on your radar because somebody needs to tell you. But also, I encourage you to go to Mass to find the love in Mass. Us Catholics believe that the Eucharist, the host, the communion, the bread, it goes by a lot of names, is the body of Jesus Christ. When we go to Mass and we have the opportunity and we are blessed to receive the Blessed Sacrament, the Holy Eucharist, the body of Jesus Christ, it is the greatest thing that we have as Catholics and as Christians, right? It is the pinnacle of holiness. We get to receive the body of Jesus. Jesus is not on this earth anymore, although the Holy Spirit lives inside of us as one of the members of the Trinity. But when we go to Mass, we get to receive him. And Jesus Christ knew this when he departed, when he ascended into heaven. He knew that we should not be without him. So he gave us the Holy Spirit and he gives us his body in the holy sacrifice of the Mass. And we have the ability to go every single Sunday, aside from every single day of the week, because there's daily Mass where you can go receive Jesus, but we get to go every single Sunday and receive it. And it is our duty. It is our job. It is our privilege. It is our opportunity as Catholics and as Christians to go to Mass and receive the Holy Eucharist. And I need to emphasize this point because unfortunately, Catholics have diminished from the Mass. I was in there today and it's Super Bowl Sunday and people are prioritizing the Eagles over Jesus Christ or Mahomes or whoever you're rooting for. And it's disgusting. And I hate it. And it really just destroys feelings. And it's just a terrible thing. We need to be going to Mass. And again, I don't say this to scare anybody by saying you're going to hell, right? At the end of the day, God is the judge. I make no judgment. He's going to judge me just as he's going to judge everybody else when we die. But it is your job as a Catholic and a Christian, and not only a job, you should want to. You should want to, because when you go receive the Eucharist and you spend time in prayer on Sunday and you celebrate the Lord's Day, you are doing the greatest thing that we have as Catholics. And I think a lot of people right now on Sundays, what they think is they think of a reset, right? They're like, oh, I get a chance to reset from the week. When really for us Catholics, it is the start of the week, and we get to start the week with Jesus, with the Holy Eucharist. So I encourage everybody to go to Mass. But I had a reading. There was a reading that Father Tim gave, and it was the sermon, it was the gospel reading, and I want to just talk about it because it actually really resonated with me, and especially on this episode where we're talking about building a portfolio, right? And think about this: you're building a portfolio, right? Let's just say you go for a year and you all of a sudden have 20 doors, you've accumulated 20 doors, right? And you have passive income coming in, and it's all these amazing things that us real estate investors love, that we want, right? We want more doors, we want more cash flow, we want more freedom, we want all of this stuff. And I listened to this reading today, and it just really hit home because the reading is, the call of Simon the fisherman. That's what it's labeled. It's Luke chapter 5, verses 1 to 11. And I'm going to hit you with this reading, and then we're going to break it down. I'll give you my perspective on it. And I'm probably going to botch the location name, so just a heads up on that. But while the crowd was pressing in on Jesus and listening to the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret. He saw 2 boats there alongside the lake. The fishermen had disembarked and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, the one belonging to Simon, he asked him to put out a short distance from the shore. Then he sat down and taught the crowds from the boat. After he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put into the deep water and lower your nets for a catch." Simon said in reply, "Master, we have worked hard all night and have caught nothing, but at your command I will lower the nets." When they had done this, they had caught a great number of fish, and their nets were tearing. They signaled to their partners in the other boat to come help them. They came and filled both boats so that they were in danger of sinking. When Simon Peter saw this, he fell at the knees of Jesus and said, "Depart from me, Lord, for I am a sinful man." For astonishment at the catch of the fish they had made seized him and all of those with him, and likewise James and John, the sons of Zebedee, who were partners of Simon. Jesus said to Simon, "Do not be afraid. From now on you will be catching men." When they brought their boats to the shore, they left everything and followed him. So when I heard this, Father Tim's big focus was on, Simon Peter eventually, being very, in awe of what Jesus had done and recognizing himself as a sinful man and asking Jesus to depart from him, pretty much being like, "I am not worthy, I am not worthy to be in your presence." And I think that's really powerful. But for something that resonated with me is actually what happened at the end of the passage, where it says, when they brought their boats to the shore, they left everything and followed him. So these guys are fishermen, right? That's how they make a living, right? And there's absolutely a purpose in what we do when it comes to work, right? Work is a positive, especially when we unite it to God, right? Like, I'm a real estate investor. Yes, I absolutely want to acquire properties. I absolutely want to make money, but I need to unite my work to God, right? And that's what we're all called to do. We're all called to do that. So these guys are fishermen, and they just literally hit the mother lode, right? It's basically like they won the lottery with the amount of fish that Jesus has given them. And they go back to shore, and what does the gospel say? It says they left everything and followed him. So what they realized in this situation is, we have gotten this massive payday, and it's awesome. But what we really actually gained is Jesus and the word of God and the Messiah in our presence, and we are going to follow him, right? And to me, it was one of those reflection moments of, even when we pray, because I pray for prosperity, of course, right? That's one of the things that I pray for, right? I pray for virtue. I pray that I follow in the path that God puts in front of me. But I go into my workday and I pray for help with everything that I'm dealing with. It's an important thing, and we're called to do that as people that work. And in this situation, again, they have the best payday that they could have with all of these fish, yet they just let it go and they follow God. And it just is one of those symbols for us to recognize, again, that even in the midst of all of this, right? We're real estate investors, we're aspiring entrepreneurs, we're capitalists, whatever the situation is, we're business owners. Amidst all of this building and developing and money and all of that, we need to keep our eyes and follow the path that Jesus puts in front of us. And for Peter here and the other apostles, the path was to follow him, to become a fisher of men. And we are all called to follow Jesus. Now, does that mean that we're all called to just like let go of everything and go live in poverty or go join the Peace Corps or something like that. No, that's not necessarily what it is, right? If you are a husband, if you're a father, you are in your role, especially if you were in marriage, right? You are called to provide for those that are entrusted to you. And for me, that includes my wife, it includes my daughter, it includes my son on the way. It is my job to provide. It would not be very responsible of me if I just said, honey, we're going to sell the entire portfolio and we're going to sell our house and we're going to go, live in poverty and I'm going to donate to all these other people here and I'm not going to like take care of our kids. Like that's not responsible. It's not what I'm called to do. I'm called to be charitable. Absolutely. Right. That's one of the three massive virtues that I'm called to as a Catholic man. I'm called to follow Jesus in all things. Right. And if Jesus is putting me on a different path, I'm called to listen to that path and to follow that path. And in some cases, my life might take some different turns that I'm not necessarily predicting. But in this situation of the apostles, they have the fish, like they have a massive payday on their hands, but they see what's more important. And regardless of, whether we're real estate investors or we're business owners, at the end of the day, what is most important is following God, is going to Jesus, right? Is bringing ourselves to that. And that's something that's really important that I just very much felt resonated with me. And especially when we talk about pray the rosary and buy real estate, the whole point of that is, striving for generational wealth while maintaining spiritual poverty. And this is a great example of that, right? Continually to, do your job, right? They're out there, they're fishing. Jesus is directing them to fish. That's the same for us. We have our job that we're called to do, our occupation that we have the ability to unite with Jesus. And then also keeping that spiritual poverty, understanding that no matter how much money, no matter how many houses, no matter, what levels of accomplishments we get to here on earth, it's all passing. And we got to keep that on the forefront. So I hope that you enjoyed that reading. If you didn't hear it in church, and again, please, please, please get to Mass. I can't ask you enough. And do it for yourself, do it for your family, do it for your soul, unite yourself with Christ. All right, so let's get into it. So scaling a portfolio, part 2. So we talked about the internal. Now we're going to talk about the external, right? We're going to talk about what the actual mechanism is. And the mechanism that I use, and this is not the mechanism that needs to be used. I want everybody to understand that. You could buy things differently. You could exit deals differently. You could do a bunch of different things. But what I use is called the BRRRR strategy, which stands for buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. I'm going to be breaking that down. I'm going to break down the whole entire breakdown here. But what I want everybody to understand is this is not the way that this is not the only way that you could scale a portfolio. You could go buy a property with 20% down, leave your money in the deal, go acquire more money from somebody else and go buy another property, right? Or you just have enough funds where you can just go buy a handful of properties and you can just leave your money parked there and make it a return on your money and have that as your passive income coming in every single month. That's 100% a possibility of a way to scale a portfolio. You can go out and buy short-term rentals because you don't want to be in the long-term rental game, and you can go scale a portfolio that way. You can scale a portfolio a lot of different ways. This is just the way that I do it. And in my opinion, is the fastest and most efficient way of scaling a portfolio from the ground up, right? So the first one is the buy. And what you need here is you need an acquisition engine. An acquisition engine is an engine that is going to bring you deals in and out. It's going to consistently be bringing you deals because, again, if we're scaling a portfolio, when we talk about scaling, we're talking about 2, 3, 4 properties a month. You need to be able to go out and source those deals. And what I would highly suggest here is you need a few different marketing sources. The first one, the first level, the surface level is on-market deals, right? And in some markets, especially in a little bit more like those cities, right? Think like Philadelphia, think like Baltimore, Maryland, think like Jacksonville, Florida, think like Louisville, Kentucky. Those types of cities where there's just a little bit more volume, you're going to have good success of finding some deals on market still, right? They might still be a little bit overpriced. That doesn't mean that you're not going to have to be able to negotiate out and try to get them for a better pricing, but you're going to at least at that surface level be able to find some of those deals. And a lot of times in cities like that, it's more of an investor environment. And when you're scaling a portfolio, to go into more of an investor environment is an easier way to kind of go about that. The barrier to entry is a little bit low. A lot of the properties that are kind of coming on market already appeal in some cases to investors. They're distressed, X, Y, and Z. That's surface level number one. Right now, again, that doesn't mean that you can't scale a portfolio in some more affluent areas or some more smaller towns and that maybe don't have so much volume going on the market, or when anything that's on the market, you're also battling with homeowners. That's a possibility also. So that doesn't mean you can't scale there. It's just that's surface level. If you have to go past the surface level, now you need to start incorporating other pieces of the acquisition engine. One of them is wholesalers, right? So I talk a lot about wholesaling. I'm a wholesaler at heart. I identify as a wholesaler, at least in the past. Now I'm definitely more of a buy and hold investor, but I still do some wholesaling. But I come from wholesaling. That's where I got my start. That's where I got all of my education. Wholesalers, their job is to source off-market deals and to bring them to investors just like you who are trying to scale portfolios or buy their next investment deal, right? A wholesaler does a lot of the acquisition engine functions for you. That's what you need to understand. So you want to create good relationships with wholesalers. Now, there's a lot of negative connotations with wholesalers a lot of times. Some wholesalers out there do, their absolute best to leave no meat on the bones or just a little bit of meat that attracts an investor where they're pulling a fat assignment fee and kind of box investors out. So you want to keep an eye out for those. There's also just a lot of bad actors in the wholesale game. They'll get properties under contract. They'll say that they're the ones buying it. And then you end up coming in. They tell you have to pretend to be some sort of inspector or an insurance agent or all these other things. And again, I am totally against that type of wholesaling. When we wholesale, any of my students in D'Astoli's dojo, they wholesale the right way, which is they're totally upfront and honest with all their sellers. They wholesale with integrity and they do everything they can to make sure that their sellers get a deal that works for them, where they could also still bring a kick ASS deal to investors as well, right? But again, build relationships with wholesalers. They are going to bring you off-market deals, which could make sense for you. And again, you're going to just need as many leads coming in as possible. The next tier, right? So you have the on-market, that's tier one. You have wholesalers, that's tier two. Tier three is where you start getting into organic and paid forms of lead gen. And I created a podcast episode a little while back on how to get your next real estate investment deal without breaking the bank. That's the title of it. I highly suggest, if you haven't listened to that episode, go out and listen to that episode, because in there I talk about a lot of organic lead generations, which are things that you as a real estate investor, a portfolio scaler, should absolutely be doing. Things like driving for dollars, things like cold calling and cold texting, things like bandit signs, those types of stuff that aren't really that cost effective, or I should say they are cost effective. They're not that, cost breaking, that you should absolutely be doing on a day in and day out basis as a portfolio scaler. And then the last tier is the paid marketing tier. This is more of the tier if you are going to really, really hit the ground running and you're going to spend money on direct mail. You're going to spend money on, mass text campaigns. You're going to spend money on Google ads. You're going to start doing these things that are promoting it a little bit more. That's some stuff that you might want to get into. That's kind of that next level. But you need to be able to build out the acquisition engine, and you need as many leads coming to you as possible from that part, because that's the buy aspect. The buy aspect is all about that acquisition engine, and you cannot scale a portfolio if you can't buy deals. That's number one. So keep that in mind, right? Number two is the renovation part of it, the rehab, right? So after you buy these properties, you need to be able to rehab these properties. And here's where, the people aspect, like we talked about in the last episode, as one of the main factors needed to scale a portfolio. This is really, the people really drive the entire BRRRR strategy and the entire scaling strategy. Because as we just mentioned, you need the people to bring you deals, right? And those people could be, actual homeowners in an area, right? Actual sellers. They could be wholesalers. They could be agents, right? That's a big part of the people process. Now we look at the rehab, and the people process is also part of there, because you need contractors that you can lean on. And again, if you are buying 2, 3, 4 deals a month, you are going to be having multiple renovations going on. So you are going to need contractors that you can rely on, that are trustworthy, that are going to do a good job, that are going to have your best interests at heart as well, that want to do a good project and want to actually take pride in what they do. And you might need multiple crews, right? Like we have 2 crews that really work on everything. We have one that's like our big bulk crew. They're able to handle 2 to 3 renovations at a time. And then we kind of have like a secondary crew that we bring in if our main bulk crew can't take on another job, and we might want to, get that renovated real quick because we have some tenants that are looking for properties like that, or we just know that we're on a tight time constraint with our lender and we got to get that job done quickly. We have another crew that we could bring in there. So you're going to want to have at least one really, really solid crew that can work on a couple projects at a time, if not 2 or 3 crews to really get going. And this is really hard. As I always talk about, when it comes to contractors, finding a good, reliable, trustworthy contractor is like finding a spouse. You need to go on a lot of dates. And I've had bad experience with contractors. I've talked about that on the show a handful of times. You need to go on dates. You need to test it out. But it's really, really important that you have this piece in place, because if this piece falls apart, as with really any piece in the process of the BRRRR strategy, but if this piece falls apart, you could really be left holding the bag. And that's a very, very big problem. So one thing that I will say when it comes to finding contractors, if you're kind of like, man, I don't have any contractors, I've never really worked on a project, but I want to start getting into this, I want to try to scale a portfolio. Number one, the first surface level for this is referrals. Like, I lean a lot of the times whenever I have to go outside of my crew that I've worked with now and that my partner Steve has worked with for years now, whenever I have to go outside of that crew, I lean on other investors, either in the area or just investors that I know that I'm tight with, either through South Jersey Real Estate Investors Group or through any other types of mentorship programs that I'm a part of. I lean very much on them for referrals. And one of my mentors, Marcus, he sent me like 3 contractors that were outside of my contracting crew that I still use to this day. And one of them is one of my diehard guys who literally had a gun pulled on him at one of my properties and actually asked Steve and I if we wanted him to go back in and finish the job, which we were like, absolutely not. Like, please get out of there. But again, we lean on referrals when it comes to that stuff. So if you are kind of looking for contractors, go to people that you know that are in the industry, ask them for referrals. Surface level number 2 is go online and start looking for contracting crews. Make sure you look at reviews though. That is really, really important. You got to be looking at the reviews, because if you don't look at reviews and you bring somebody on and you get, the backhand and they end up taking advantage of you, you need to be, you're going to go back and be like, well, should I have seen this coming? Right. And if you're looking at the reviews and everybody's like, yeah, these guys are untrustworthy, they're not doing good jobs, they're leaving and they're taking money, X, Y, and Z, that's on you, because you really should have looked into those reviews. But you're going to look at those reviews, and some of those reviews could be really great. It could be like, yeah, these guys are awesome. They did a great job. They're exceptional. For instance, I'll use my boy like Justin Pavlich. He's got his company, Limitless Contracting. Like, his reviews are top tier. And I know personally because I've used him a handful of times, but he is one of those guys where he's built a very good brand and a very good reputation, and he'd be a great person that I would obviously want working on my houses, right? So that's number 2. And then number 3, one other thing that I would suggest, and even do this for your acquisitions too, but post on Facebook. Go in some of these Facebook groups, especially in the areas that you're, buying in, right? Like, whatever it is, Albany, New York, investment properties, Facebook group or whatever it is. Hey, I'm looking for some reliable contractors. I got a couple projects that are coming up that I'd like some work on. If anybody, is in the area and is licensed and insured, or, that's up to you if you want to use a licensed and insured contractor, I suggest it. Please reach out to me, and I could, get you over to the projects and start getting some quotes, stuff like that. Start getting in some of these groups, start building some relationships, start getting people to kind of understand who you are, what you do, and you're going to, find some potential good contracts from that. But that's really, really crucial. Get your contractors in place before you start buying. All right. If you haven't started buying yet, I suggest this. Get your contractors in place before you start buying property. You do not want to be left with, you don't want to go on a shopping spree and buy 3 houses. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I ain't got a contractor to work on these houses, or I got a contractor that, that took advantage of me, and now I'm left holding the bag. So next is the rent, right? So we got the buy, we got the rehab, we got the rent. When it comes to the rent, what I would suggest is, number 1, get a very, very solid property management software, especially if you're going to scale. There are some very, very cheap ones for like some smaller portfolios. If you're really kind of just getting going and you're like in that 1 to 5 to maybe even 10 range, like Rent Ready, I've heard very good things about. I used Avail for a short period of time. It was pretty solid. But if you are going to scale, Buildium. I use, like Steve and I, we personally use Door Loop. I think Door Loop is really, really awesome. There's so many great things. Tenants could put all of their requests through there. They pay through Door Loop. There's a lot of great analytics through Door Loop. Door Loop, and I don't personally use this, but Door Loop even has its own like kind of QuickBooks built into it. And again, this is not an ad. I'm not promoting Door Loop in any sense. I can care less whether you use it or not. I just think it's pretty good software. But get serious about your property management software, right? You could send applications through a lot of these softwares, which is really, really important. And that's really big, right? I can get a tenant comes out, they look at a property, boom, we could send them an application right off the bat. They fill it out. Door Loop pulls the criminal report, the credit report, the eviction report right off the bat. And then I have everything right there to be able to make a decision, and I can make decisions on tenants through the property management software as well. So get comfortable with your property management software. And it's not as simple as just like buying it and then that's it, right? And some of them are like apartments.com, it's totally free. Avail, I don't think there was any type of like onboarding. But when I signed on with Doorloop, like there was a legitimate onboarding process that was over the course of weeks. Like they brought, myself and my property manager and my in-house property manager, she jumped on the call with me and we like went through the entire like software and how to use it the best. And we have like our own dedicated agent and all of this stuff. And it's awesome. Like a lot of that is really, really cool. So get comfortable with it before you start bringing on a lot of tenants. And if you already you're kind of starting to scale, make a decision on what property management software you're using, because it's going to be very, very hard for you to switch like midterm. That's why if you have like 10 tenants and you're using like a free software, you're using something kind of on the basic side, and then you want to switch, it's going to be an overhaul just to switch over those tenants and then to start onboarding new ones. So make sure you have property management software. Also, another thing is like make sure you know like what your tenant pool is like and what your competition is, right? So like if you're buying these houses and you're renovating them and you're renovating them like to the T, and you got the granite countertops and you got the gold finishes and you got all these like really sexy looking things in there, and then like the rents aren't really demanding like that type of finish, you're kind of like beating a dead horse a little bit with that and kind of overkilling it. So know kind of like what these properties are renting for an area and what type of condition they're renting in, and then find ways to put yourself aside from the competition, right? And if you're in an area that has like a lot of rental activity, you might need to put yourself aside from the competition through pricing, right? You might want to underprice a little bit below market so you get more tenant traction, or you might want to offer some sort of incentives on the front end. Or if it's really, really hard for tenants to get in there, that's fantastic for you. That means there's like good demand. Just know like what's the rental pricing, what's kind of the properties that need to be looked at, like what do they need to look like in order to get that pricing, and then set yourself up for success on the rental side there. That's really, really important. Last thing on this, we're going to go into refinances, right? So we have the buy, we have the rehab, we have the rent, and then we're getting into the refi. The refinance is where you cash out, right? So you do what's called a cash out refinance. And I've explained this on the show a handful of times. The cash out refinance, the refinance itself is just you replacing your old loan with a new loan. That's how that works, right? So if you bought this property and you bought it, let's just say with a hard money lender. And I've talked about hard money on the show as well. Hard money lender is a short-term lender, usually anywhere between like 6 months to 12 months. And they're going to lend based on the property, right? So you bring them a deal. You say, hey, I have this property. I could buy it for 100. It's going to be worth, 250 after I put $50,000 into it. Can you lend on this deal? They look at it. They send an appraisal out there, possibly, the rehab guy, whatever the case might be, and they approve it. And then they fund your deal. Let's just say it's for 12 months. Now you have, let's just say 100 and let's say you buy it for 100. You have to put 20% down. So you have 80,000 plus your $50,000 in renovation. You have a total loan amount of 130,000. You go for the refinance after you've renovated, you've put the $50,000 worth of work into it. You rented it out. Let's just say you rented it out for $1,800. You go to refinance. You are going to get a new loan to pay off your old loan of $130,000. And if you've gotten a good appraisal on the property, you could even make money on the deal at this point in the stage, right? In this point in the process, you could replace that one. Let's just say they give you back after closing costs, you're getting a new loan for $150,000. You pay off your old loan of $130,000. You make $20,000 on the refinance, and now you have a property that's on a new 30-year debt loan, or possibly 15 years if you elect for 15. And you have a tenant in there that's paying, and that's paying off your mortgage and giving you some cash flow as well. That's how the whole mechanism should work. That is a top tier BRRRR right there, where you actually refinance, you get all of your money back, and you possibly make some money as well. And you now have a tenant that's paying off your debt and put money in your pocket. What you need here at this point in the process is a reliable and quick action lender. Okay. And this is something that's very, very hard to come by, because a lot of lenders just truthfully just suck. Like they're hard to work with. They overpromise and underdeliver. That has been a very, very well-known thing just throughout the industry. So you might, again, similar to contractors, you might need to go on a lot of dates here to really, really find that reliable, trustworthy, quick action lender. But you want to find that lender. This is such a critical piece in the process. And if you do not have a reliable lender here, you are going to be banging your head against the wall a lot of times because you're going to struggle to get equity out of the deal. You're going to struggle to pay back the original loans that you have, and you're just going to struggle to keep the engine flowing to continue to move. So you need to find reliable lenders at this point who are able to quickly get you out of these properties, put you on 30-year or 15-year long-term debt, and get that old loan paid off and put money into your pocket. Again, let's talk about service level. Service level number one is referrals, right? If you are looking for good lending, go to people that you know that have used those lenders before and ask about their experiences with them. What was your experience with X, Y, and Z lending company? What was your experience with ABC lending company? Who do you recommend that I use in order to actually refinance these deals? Or who do you recommend that I use to purchase these deals, right? There's two sides to that coin. Understand who those lenders are, go get those referrals and start using them and make sure you have good experiences with them. Service level two, you're probably going to see some promotions or ads on Facebook or anywhere else along those lines. You could reach out to those people. You could do some kind of introductory call, see what kind of terms they offer, see stuff like that. That's probably like service level two. But when it comes to lenders, in my opinion, find those referrals. Like that is number one. If you could get those referrals, it's really, really important. And the last part. So after you hit this refinance, you are going to do the repeat process, right? So the repeat process is where you take that money that you recycled through that deal, through that cash out refinance, right? So you should have at least gotten your money back. Hopefully you've made money at that point. If you didn't make money and you didn't get your money back, you might have bought a not so good deal. And you got to make sure that you learn from situations like that. And those happen to everybody. It's happened to me. So I'm not just saying that like you failed. That's absolutely not the case. A lot of times in real estate, you can't really fail. There's still tax benefits from it. And there's a lot of other benefits that come with it. I don't want to say that because you can still fail. But if you didn't get your money back, learn from that mistake. Learn from why you didn't get that. You probably messed up your ARV or your rehab budget. In any sense, once you get that money back, you're going to recycle it. You're going to repeat the process. You're going to use it to go buy another deal, right? Or in some way, shape, or form, reinvest in your business, whether that means upgrading your bookkeeping, your accounting, upgrading your renovation and how things operate in that regard. You're going to reinvest that money. But you're going to want to create SOPs. SOPs stand for standard operating procedures. Understand something here, guys. When you scale a portfolio and you do it legitimately and you do it aggressively and you do it with intent, it is not just a day job. You are building a business, a legitimate real estate investment solutions company. That is what you are building. You need to take that seriously. You need to understand that you are the CEO. You are the operator of this entire company. And if you are trying to build a lasting company, you need to put on paper what went well and what didn't, and what we learned from and what we should be doing so that anybody that you bring on, again, that people aspect, because you're going to start bringing people on for your team. And eventually you're probably going to have somebody that replaces your day-to-day business so that you could go enjoy your passive income on the beach with your family, doing whatever it is that you want to do. You need to start putting together SOPs, standard operating procedures, so that other people can follow them and could utilize them. Right. And this happens like all the time as a integrator, as a operations manager, as a co-CEO, whatever you want to call me within D&D Equities. Me and my boy Steve, we create SOPs on the regular. We say, all right, this went wrong. Why did this happen? What should we do to fix that? Let's create an SOP over it. Hey, this went really, really well. We had a lot of success here. Let's create an SOP over it so we continue to focus on it and utilize it. So that way, anybody in our company that we bring on that's with us now, or that's with us in a year from now, or that's with us 10 years from now, if they say, how do I do this? Boom, there's an SOP for it, right? And what that does is two things. A, it's your memory file. It's your memory file of what's gone on in the past and what you've learned from it and how you've capitalized on all of those experiences. Excuse me. And number two is it replaces you from the business. And that's something that you should be trying to do. You should be trying to replace yourself from the business. And if you love what you do, like I love what I do. I love the day-to-day stuff right now. Although, like I said, a lot of times you feel like the nail. That's all part of it because it makes really good. It makes you feel really good when you're the hammer. I like what I do, but I do not want to be here long term, right? By May of 2026, my hope is maybe not necessarily that soon, but shortly after that, I would say by 2027, Steve and I are totally out of the roles that we're currently in. Steve's no longer in every house every single day. I'm no longer, operating the acquisitions and the refinances and the property management and all this other stuff. We have other people that are running those roles, and we could go and focus on bigger investments that we want to get involved in, and we could go enjoy that time that we have worked for. All this stuff that's come to us now that we've worked for. We can go enjoy that stuff with our family. That's our ultimate goal. So that's a big thing. You got to create SOPs on this repeat, right? You got to understand what went wrong, why we should be operating better, X, Y, and Z. There's a few other outside factors, but again, I'll just recap that real quick. So the BRRRR, you buy. You need the acquisition engine. You're also going to need lenders at that point, right? You're going to need people to go to get money. I created a whole other episode called All I Want for Christmas is Other People's Money. It was a Christmas episode. It came out right before Christmas. If you're interested about lending and stuff like that, go back and listen to that episode. But acquisition engine, buying those deals is the first level. Number 2 is the rehab. Get reliable and trustworthy contractors. Number 3 is the rent. Get a good property management software. Know where you're going to get your tenants and how you're going to market to those tenants. Number 4 is the refinance. Make sure you have reliable and trustworthy lenders that you can lean on that are going to take quick action. And number 5 is that repeat. Make sure that you are recycling that money. You're reinvesting it into your business to either buy more properties or to advance your acquisitions or whatever the case might be, to advance your team, whatever it might be. And make sure you're creating standard operating procedures of everything that you're doing. That is really, really critical. The last factors that I'll say, guys, on scaling a portfolio. Number 1, you need to be decisive. You need to be decisive. When you get to the point where you have 10, 15, 20 properties, there are so many things going on a regular basis. You cannot sit and wait. A lot of times when you sit and wait, it only makes problems harder and makes them more difficult. Make sure that you are decisive. Be decisive on the properties that you buy. Be decisive on the situations that you have that come up during the renovation costs. Be decisive on other situations, right? You're going to have situations that come up where you go to refinance a deal. This happened to me personally, where you go to refinance a deal and you're like thinking that you're going to get 75% loan to value, and that lender all of a sudden, turns you left, and they say we can only give you 70% loan to value because of X, Y, and Z. And at that point, you got to make decisions. Are we going to go find another lender? Are we going to cut our losses? We're going to get this money as fast as possible. Those are decisions that you're going to have to make, and a lot of times you don't want to be caught waiting because it only makes the situation worse. You got to be decisive. If you are not someone who's a decisive decision maker, start making that a focal point for yourself. Number 2 is you got to be risk on. You got to be risk on when it comes to scaling a portfolio, guys. Now, that doesn't mean go out and make stupid decisions. It means make decisive, calculated decisions, but understand that there's still going to be some inherited risk. Now, you need to know what that inherited risk is, and you need to know how to go about, maneuvering and kind of preparing for it if it were to go south. So that way it's not as detrimental to your business, and kind of how to kind of counter that if that risk ends up having to become a bigger factor. And the last thing I will say, this is a little more subtle, prepare for holding costs. So keep this in mind. When you buy 2, 3, 4 properties a month, 5 properties a month, whatever it might be, and let's just say out of those 4 properties, all 4 of them need renovations, because that's very, very common. And usually when you buy a BRRRR deal, it needs to be distressed. You need to be able to add some sweat equity. Not all the time. There have been a few that I bought that have been relatively turnkey that I've still been able to make some money on. But still, most of the time, 9 out of 10 times at the bare minimum, you're going to have distressed properties. It's how the process works. So if I buy 4 properties this month and my contracting crew let's say they could work on 3 at a time. At the end of the day, I now have 4 mortgages that need to be paid. And if I already have 4 other properties, and let's say 2 of those 4 properties are rented out, all of a sudden I only have 2 properties that are being rented out, and I have 6 properties that are in the process of being renovated, which means that at that current moment, they are what Robert Kiyosaki would call a liability to me, because they're pulling money out of my pocket. Until I'm able to turn them to become assets that put money into my pocket, they are a liability to me. And when you are scaling a portfolio, you need to understand that you need to have money set aside for holding costs. I'll tell you right now, like our holding costs every single month are about $13,000 on our mortgages. Now, a good bulk of those are rented out, but our tenants usually do have a grace period. They have till the 5th to pay. So understand that a lot of times we'll have to front that $13,000 on the 1st and the 2nd and the 3rd when our mortgages come out. And then we get the money recouped when our tenants start paying. But even still, and now we're up to a point where we're pretty much broken even in regards to that. But before that, it wasn't that case. We were pulling out. We were shelling out $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 per month on holding costs. And as you're scaling a portfolio, that is going to constantly happen. And for Steve and I, we know that that is going to happen at least for the next year to year and a half. So we need to be prepared for that. We need to budget for that. We need to understand that we're going to have to set money aside, that when we have these refinances come through, or we have some additional money coming through from rents or, tenants moving in and whatever the case might be, we need to have that money set aside. And that is something that's very, very subtle, that goes very, very under the radar. And once you're in it and you're like, I'm 10 properties in, oh my gosh, I got, $11,000, $12,000 coming out of a mortgage, if not more. In some cases, if you're buying $200,000, $300,000 properties, you could be talking $20,000 off 10 properties easy, right? So that stuff happens. You got to prepare for it and you got to know. But all in all, guys, that is the mechanism. That is the structure. That is the system. You buy properties that are distressed, right? You have an acquisition engine to buy them. You have good, reliable contractors. You get them renovated. You get them out to your tenant pool. You get them rented out. You refinance. You pull all of your money out, hopefully even more money after the fact, and then you repeat the process. And that is how you scale a rental portfolio. Again, if you didn't listen to part one, go back and listen to that because it's very important. You need to work on yourself before you can start building anything. That's a bottom line. It's a period, end, stop. And once you do that and you start getting into this, start making sure you have good people. You got to have good people. You got to have good contractors. You got to have good lenders. You got to have good people going out there looking out for deals for you. All of that stuff. It's really, really important because keep in mind, you are going to be the operator. You are going to be the person that's running point on a lot of this stuff. The people around you can make or break the whole process. They really, really can. So Rosary in Real Estate, we have our first event on February 11th. It's a Tuesday. So if you are in the South Jersey area, that's going to be at the Tap Room in Haddon Township. I highly recommend that you guys come out. We are going to be talking about the Rosary, why you should pray it every single day, why it's going to help you grow in holiness and in virtues. It's going to make you a better person, and how it's going to bring you closer to Jesus and to Mary. And then we're going to be talking about real estate and why you should buy it, because it's going to build generational wealth for your family. It's going to provide a hedge against inflation. It's going to protect your money. It's going to put more money into your pocket every single month. There's so many benefits that come with buying real estate, just as there's so many benefits of praying the Rosary every single day. And I pray that you guys come out. I pray that you continue to pray the Rosary and buy real estate. And I am very, very excited for the event. We're going to have a giveaway within the gift basket giveaway. So anybody that comes is going to be entered into this giveaway totally for free. You can buy more tickets when you're there, and all those tickets will go to Good Counsel Homes. It's a foundation for women that are homeless that have children. You can read more about that. Go on Good Counsel Homes and donate. It's a great, great cause. But we're going to be having a giveaway. In the giveaway is going to be a limited time Pray the Rosary, Buy Real Estate sweatshirt. It's Our Lady of Lourdes edition. Since the event falls on Our Lady of Lourdes feast day, I put a limited Our Lady of Lourdes sweatshirt in there. It is the Pray the Rosary, Buy Real Estate sweatshirt. You probably see me wear it on Frankie D'Astoli _REI on my Instagram, but it is blue. It is a powder blue for Our Lady of Lourdes. That's going to be in there. There's going to be a book on the Rosary called Secrets of the Rosary from St. Louis de Montfort, one of the greatest saints of all time, who was very, very dedicated to Mary and to Jesus, and to the Rosary itself. I'm also putting a book in there from Ken McElroy, who's one of my kind of role model real estate investors, The ABCs of Real Estate Investing. It's a phenomenal book for intro investors and advanced investors. There's going to be a Our Lady of Lourdes Rosary in there as well. And I am putting a coupon for 100% off for D'Astoli's Dojo wholesaling real estate course and weekly group coaching calls. So if you are there, you are going to have a chance to win a 100% off coupon code for D'Astoli's Dojo wholesaling real estate course, which I believe right now I have valued at $595. So this is a totally free event. If you show up, you get entered into it. But regardless, if you can't make it, no worries at all. We are expecting some snow too, so I may even have to postpone it. I'm hoping that's not the case, but keep an eye on it. Follow me on Instagram. You'll get all the updates on there. But pray the Rosary, buy real estate, go scale a portfolio. If you have any questions, DM me on Instagram. Love talking with you guys. Thanks so much for listening. Peace out.